Well, we're in the parish of Holy Trinity, which is partly within the city wall and partly outside. It was, in the 20th century, was later amalgamated with St Leonard's, but at the time we're talking about, it was its own parish. And in the early 20th century, they decided they needed a new parish hall. They had parish rooms in this area, but they really wanted a hall. But yes, they were given the plot of land, and they raised money, various fundraising events and saving schemes and donations and such to build the building. And they finished it in 1914. Well, this is a rather significant date, of course, because immediately war broke out and it was requisitioned for military use. This didn't last right throughout the war, but towards the end again it was being used for the military, and they were very pleased to have it back for its original purposes for parish functions and things in 1918. So it then did continue in its work as a parish hall. It was used for quite a lot of social occasions. It did have a rudimentary stage downstairs, I think, and there'd be lots of societies. After the war, there was quite a move towards society. Boy Scouts and Girl Guides who got going, and all these sort of people used the premises for their meetings, and some commercial ventures hired it occasionally as well. Then another war broke out, and in the Second World War it was requisitioned, and a lot of the time it was used by Whipples, the clerical manufacturers of vestments and church furniture, and I think they made parachutes and things like that here. They because they were set up to do textiles, they did quite a lot of that kind of thing in the war, textiles and the sort of bags to carry ammunition in, this kind of thing. And so it had that function. Again, that was a sort of disruption. But after the war, it went back to its parish function, and you've been told by others who perhaps remember back that far, or at least have been told by their parents perhaps, or family, local people, remember it being a youth club and all this kind of thing.
I came to Exeter in 1966. Friars Gate then, or before that slightly, was upstairs. It was a weight training building, or they had weight training club up here. And then the downstairs was the youth club. And it was quite amazing. We had a lovely guy running it. He was the Reverend Eric Jones, really nice man. And he actually became a family friend as well. And he said to me one day, I need somebody to help in the coffee bar. And I was sort of 15, I think, 15-ish, 16. And I said, I'll come and do that. And the coffee bar was right in the corner, which is backstage for you now. And then there were booths down that side of where the stage is. There were sort of booths for sitting in. And this side in the big hall was where we had discos on every Friday evening. And that was quite fun because we used to do, the DJ would stop and we'd do sort of statues, sort of silly games, even though they were teenagers. So yeah, I used to enjoy coming and helping out with that. And then once, I think the weight training club left and the boxing club took over. Well, I married a guy who was a boxer, so I then became involved with that side of it. And I can remember the boxing ring up here and lots of people sitting in the audience. So yes, my history with the building continued that way as well.
I knew why she decided to form a company to train actors. It had been a dream of hers since she started acting herself, because she'd learned in a similar sort of way, and then she'd been in the rep system, and by the time Cygnet started, the rep system was on its last legs. So she had always had this vision of having a company who were learning to be actors while performing at the same time.
But what she was doing was encouraging people who were interested in theatre to take it seriously. So she ended up with young people, particularly boys, who really wanted to act, but were being told by the school and their careers people and everything, boys like you don't go into the theatre, go and get a electrical training or painting and whatever. But some of them hung on to being encouraged, and so the very beginnings of Cygnet were actually two boys in the attic in this house having lessons after work.
In Cygnet's early days, they were really working mainly in Monica's sitting room, putting on plays in her sitting room. And it's a lovely big through room of an old house built in early Victorian times, or even before Victorian times, I think, so that it had a partition and it became a big enough room to work and perform in. But clearly it wasn't going to be a sufficient provision for a theatre training company, and so she had to start looking for other spaces, and they hired spaces. I think Alistair can tell you a little bit more about that, because they used to have to do movement classes after dog training in the Buller Hall in St Thomas's.
Every day we'd be rolling around on the floor, there'd be dog hair and slightly unpleasant smells on the floor, and we'd do movement classes there pretty much every day. And then from there we went across to Emmanuel Hall, which is now where Theatre Alibi is based, and did some rehearsals upstairs there. And we rehearsed also in the house which is where Mary Evans now lives, who was our original administrator.
I trained there under the directorship of Monica Shallis in 1982 to 1985. And in those days, they didn't have the new theatre or the Cygnet Training Theatre in Friars Gate as they do now. All the work was done in the music room downstairs at New North Road, with some rehearsals being done in Emmanuel Hall. We were a small group of student actors, and in that space we learnt about acting, voice work, we did a lot of movement. I used to run Litz Pisk movement classes first thing in the morning and period dance.
Eventually, through being itinerant in lots of church halls, and the performances actually taking place in hired village halls and in National Trust gardens and outdoor performances such as those, and in her sitting room, they decided they needed to look for a building, and this building happened to be one of the ones that they looked at. It had been vacant for a while. It was being leased, I think, or hired by Exeter City Council or Devon County Council as a youth centre, but at this stage St Leonard's Church, which owned it, wanted to sell it, and so Monica found it as a suitable place for the training, and it's ideal.
So this is our upstairs space, which we had insulated and upgraded about 5 years ago. Huge amounts of storage for our set and costumes, and previously it had been used as a sports room. So above you'll see that there are the kind of ropes and that sort of thing. When we first came into the building in 86, the windows up here were all meshed over with wire, and there were basketball hoops at either end, and there was a boxing club up here years back, as well as other youth groups and language schools and parish activities. So this is our theatre space. It seats 100 people. We can have it in the round or on traverse form. We've done promenade performances in here, all manner of possibilities.
I know Ros from Crediton, from when she used to teach at QE, because when my husband and I got together, we lived in Crediton. But my mum lived in Exeter, and she actually started coming to help front of house. And then, lo and behold, we came and started doing front of house. And it's been really nice to have that sort of connection all the way through. Since I moved back to Exeter, and it's still nice to have it now.
Monica, his genius and passion for training people and empowering them and bringing out their qualities and persisting until they really fulfilled their potential, and her passion for theatre and for what theatre and music and the arts can do for people was the inspiring and presiding genius of Cygnet for many years. She was not only a teacher, but she was a composer, an author, and a great genius. So her inspiration has really been fundamental. And Mary was, and is, a very, very dogged and persistent and faithful and passionate theatre devotee as well. So those two women between them have forged a great ethic for Cygnet.
Monica Shallis was a unique talent, both from the music, theatre, writing, every point of view, really. And what makes Cygnet unique is that she put into it. It became something out of what she contributed and everybody who came to us to learn. And without her, it would never have existed.